Around 26,000 years ago, during the height of the last glacial maximum, much of the northern hemisphere was locked in a deep freeze that modern humans can barely imagine. Ice sheets several kilometers thick crushed entire landscapes beneath their weight. Winters lasted most of the year. Summer barely deserved the name. In parts of Ice Age Europe, Siberia, and Central Asia, nighttime temperatures routinely fell below -30 degrees Celsius. Blizzards erased the horizon. Winds cut through flesh like blades, and yet humans slept, not for a night, not for a season, but for tens of thousands of years. They slept without central heating, without insulated buildings, without modern clothing, without fire burning beside them through the long, lethal night. If they had failed even briefly, they would not have died dramatically in battle or famine. They would have simply never woken up. This is the story of how they survived. To understand how Ice Age humans slept without freezing to death, we must first understand just how hostile their world truly was. The Ice Age was not one continuous block of cold, but a series of cycles. The most brutal period, the Last Glacial Maximum, stretched roughly from 26,000 to 19,000 years ago. During this time, global temperatures were on average 6 to 8 degrees Celsius colder than today. That difference may sound small, but it transformed the planet. Sea levels dropped by more than 120 meters, land bridges appeared, entire ecosystems collapsed or migrated south. Europe became a windswept tundra, forests vanished, snow and ice dominated the landscape. Humans living in this world were anatomically modern Homo sapiens, not primitive cavemen as once imagined. They had language, culture, memory, and deep environmental knowledge passed down through generations. But biologically, they were still vulnerable mammals. A naked human exposed to Ice Age night temperatures would lose consciousness within minutes and die shortly after. Sleep was the most dangerous part of their day. When awake, humans could move, hunt, repair clothing, and tend fires. When asleep, the body's temperature drops naturally, muscles relax, reaction time disappears. In the Ice Age, falling asleep unprotected meant death. Yet archaeological evidence proves beyond doubt that humans did sleep through these nights, and they did so consistently enough to raise families, care for children, and survive across generations. The key to this survival lies not in a single invention, but in a layered system of solutions that worked together. The first and most important factor was shelter selection. Ice Age humans did not randomly choose where to sleep. Sites across Europe, the Levant, and Central Asia show clear patterns. Sleeping areas were almost always located in protected environments. Caves were the most famous, but not the most common. Caves offered wind protection, stable temperatures, and natural insulation from snow. Even in deep winter, cave interiors remained close to freezing rather than plunging far below it. However, caves were rare and often already occupied by dangerous animals. More often, humans slept in rock shelters, shallow overhangs carved by erosion, or in carefully positioned camps at the base of cliffs and ridges that blocked prevailing winds. Open plains were avoided whenever possible. Wind was deadlier than cold alone. A still -20 degrees could be survived. A -20 windstorm could kill within minutes. Inside these shelters, humans built sleeping spaces that were deliberately separated from activity areas. Excavations at sites like Dolny Vistanis in present day Czech Republic and Kostanky in Russia reveal structured living zones. Fire pits were placed near entrances or central areas, while sleeping zones were tucked deeper inside, away from drafts. But fire alone was not enough. Contrary to popular imagination, humans did not sleep beside roaring fires all night. Fire consumes fuel rapidly, and Ice Age environments were often treeless. Maintaining a fire through the entire night would have required constant attention. Instead, fire was used strategically to heat the space before sleep, and sometimes rekindled briefly during the night. What truly saved them was insulation. The ground itself was lethal. Frozen earth drains heat from the body faster than cold air. Ice Age humans understood this instinctively. Archaeological layers show thick bedding materials laid deliberately on sleeping surfaces. These included dried grasses, reeds, moss, and most importantly, animal hides. Hides were not simply blankets, they were technological marvels. Properly cured hides trap air within their fibers, creating insulation comparable to modern sleeping bags. Evidence from Upper Paleolithic sites shows repeated processing of reindeer, bison, mammoth, and horse skins. These hides were layered beneath and above the body, creating a cocoon that minimized heat loss. Some sites even show signs of raised sleeping platforms, likely constructed from bones, wood, or packed earth. Elevation reduced contact with frozen ground and improved air circulation beneath bedding. Clothing played a critical role as well. Ice Age humans were not wrapped in crude pelts thrown over their shoulders. Bone needles found at sites dating back over 30 years prove the existence of tailored clothing. These needles are fine, sharp, and drilled with precision, indicating fitted garments rather than loose wraps. Layering was essential. Inner garments trapped body heat, while outer layers blocked wind and moisture. Fur was often worn with the hair facing inward, maximizing insulation. Footwear, mittens, and head coverings were common. Heat loss from extremities is rapid, and Ice Age humans protected these areas carefully. But perhaps the most underestimated factor in Ice Age sleep survival was group sleeping. Humans rarely slept alone. Families slept together. Children slept between adults. Bodies were arranged deliberately to share warmth. This behavior is still observed in modern cold climate cultures and even among animals. Shared body heat can significantly raise the temperature of a sleeping group, reducing individual heat loss. This social adaptation had consequences far beyond survival. Group sleeping strengthened social bonds, reinforced family units, and increased the survival rate of infants. It may even have influenced the evolution of human social behavior itself. Another crucial factor was metabolic adaptation. Ice Age diets were extremely high in fat and protein. Mammoth, reindeer, bison, seal, and fish provided dense caloric fuel. Fat burns slowly and generates heat over long periods. A well-fed body can maintain core temperature far longer during sleep than a starving one. Humans often ate heavily before nightfall. This was not accidental. Digesting fat generates internal heat, acting like a biological furnace through the night. There is also evidence that Ice Age humans practiced short, segmented sleep rather than a single long unconscious period. Waking briefly during the night to adjust bedding, check fires, or huddle closer would have reduced the risk of hypothermia. All of these strategies together created a system that allowed humans to sleep safely in a world that should have killed them. But survival came at a cost. Sleep was light, nights were tense, predators roamed nearby, storms could collapse shelters, a single mistake could mean death. This constant pressure shaped human psychology, cooperation, and technological innovation in ways that still echo today. By 24,000 years ago, Ice Age humans were no longer merely reacting to the cold. They were engineering their nights around it. Across Eurasia, from the frozen plains of Eastern Europe to the windswept valleys of Siberia, archaeological sites reveal something remarkable. Humans were not just finding shelter, they were building it with intention, precision, and long-term planning, all centered on one critical goal: surviving the night. One of the most striking discoveries comes from the Mammoth Steppe of Eastern Europe. At sites such as Mezhirich-Mezin and Kostenki, archaeologists uncovered circular structures built almost entirely from mammoth bones. These were not ritual monuments. They were homes. The bones of mammoths were enormous, dense, and abundant in regions where trees were scarce. Skulls formed walls, tusks curved into arches, long bones reinforced roofs. These structures were often partially dug into the ground, creating semi-subterranean shelters that trapped heat and blocked wind. Earth piled against the outer walls acted as insulation, much like modern thermal housing. Inside these bone houses, sleeping areas were clearly defined. The floors were layered with ash, charcoal, plant fibers, and animal skins. Fire pits were placed strategically, not in the center where smoke would suffocate sleepers, but near entrances or ventilation points. Heat radiated inward, while smoke escaped upward through gaps in the roof or doorways. These shelters were not temporary. Many show signs of repeated use over years, even generations. Repairs were made, bedding layers were replaced, living spaces were maintained. This tells us something critical. Ice Age humans planned for winter long before it arrived. In regions where mammoth bones were unavailable, humans turned to earth and stone. Semi-dug dwellings appear across Ice Age Siberia and Central Asia. By excavating down into the soil, humans took advantage of the Earth's natural thermal stability. Even when air temperatures dropped far below freezing, ground temperatures a short distance below the surface remained comparatively stable. Walls were reinforced with stone slabs or wooden frames where timber was available. Roofs were likely made from hides stretched over frameworks and weighed down with earth or snow. Snow itself became an insulating layer, trapping heat inside rather than allowing it to escape. This principle is still used today in igloos, though Ice Age shelters were far more varied in form. Caves, often romanticized in popular imagination, were only part of the story. While caves offered protection, they also posed dangers. Some were damp, increasing the risk of hypothermia. Others were occupied by cave bears, lions, or hyenas. Humans used caves selectively, often occupying areas near entrances where airflow could be controlled and moisture minimized. Evidence from sites like Chauvet, Lascaux, and Altamira shows that deeper cave chambers were reserved for ritual or art, not sleeping. Sleeping areas remained closer to daylight and ventilation, suggesting a careful balance between warmth, safety, and air quality. Inside all these shelters, one detail appears again and again: bedding complexity. This was not a simple pile of grass. Microscopic analysis of soil layers reveals carefully arranged sequences. A base layer of insulating plant matter was often topped with hides. In some cases, aromatic plants were added, possibly to repel insects or parasites. Ash layers beneath bedding may have served as moisture barriers or pest deterrents. This level of attention tells us that Ice Age humans understood heat loss deeply, even if they lacked modern physics. They knew that the cold crept upward from the ground. They knew that dampness killed faster than dry cold. They knew that still air was their ally, but shelter alone did not guarantee survival through the night. Another crucial element was fire management, and this is where Ice Age ingenuity truly shines. Maintaining fire in a frozen world without abundant wood required planning. Fuel sources varied by region. In some areas, humans burned driftwood, shrubs, or dried grasses. In mammoth steppe regions, they burned bone and fat. Bone fires burn longer and steadier than wood, producing less flame but more sustained heat. Fat-rich materials like marrow and grease acted as accelerants. Rather than keeping fires blazing all night, humans practiced heat banking. Fires were burned intensely before sleep, heating the shelter's interior, walls, and floor. Embers were preserved beneath ash, ready to be revived if needed. Some evidence suggests the use of heated stones placed near sleeping areas, slowly releasing warmth over hours. This reduced fuel consumption while maintaining survivable temperatures. Fire also shaped sleep patterns. Ethnographic parallels from Cold, Climate Hunter, gatherers suggest that people slept in shifts. Someone was usually awake or semi-awake, tending embers, listening for predators, or checking children. Sleep was communal and vigilant, not solitary and unconscious. Predators were a constant threat. Ice Age nights belonged to wolves, cave lions, hyenas, and bears. Sleeping humans were vulnerable, Shelters were positioned with visibility in mind. Entrances faced open ground. Fires deterred animals, but so did sound, smell, and group presence. Sleeping together increased not only warmth, but security. Children slept closest to adults. The elderly were placed near the warmest spots. These arrangements were not sentimental. They were survival strategies. Over time, these nightly routines shaped social structure. Cooperation was no longer optional. A lone human could not survive an Ice Age winter. Groups that shared shelter, fuel, food, and warmth endured. Those that did not disappeared. This pressure likely accelerated the development of complex social bonds, communication, and cultural transmission. Knowledge of how to build shelters, cure hides, and manage fire was passed down with life or death importance. A forgotten technique meant extinction. Sleep itself became a learned skill. Humans adapted their circadian rhythms to extreme environments. In winter, nights were long, darkness dominated, melatonin cycles shifted, sleep was broken, flexible, and responsive to environmental cues rather than rigid schedules. This adaptability allowed humans to wake easily if temperatures dropped or storms intensified. It also meant they could respond quickly to threats without the deep, immobilizing sleep common in modern, safe environments. The consequences of mastering sleep in the Ice Age were profound. Because humans could rest, they could heal. Because they could heal, they could hunt again. Because they could hunt, they could feed children. Because children survived, cultures continued. The ability to sleep safely in lethal cold was not a minor adaptation. It was one of the foundations of human expansion across the globe. By 22,000 years ago, Ice Age humans had pushed survival beyond shelter and fire. They had begun to transform their own bodies into tools of resistance against the cold. Archaeological evidence, biological data, and comparisons with modern cold, adapted populations reveal that surviving Ice Age sleep was not only about what humans built around themselves, but about how they fed, clothed, and trained their bodies to endure the night. Clothing was the first line of defense, and it was far more advanced than once believed. Bone needles recovered from sites across Europe and Siberia date back over 30 years. These needles are small, finely crafted, and pierced with narrow eyes, designed for sewing fitted garments rather than crude wraps. This matters because loose clothing traps less heat. Fitted clothing creates stable layers of warm air close to the skin, reducing convective heat loss during sleep. Ice Age clothing systems were layered. An inner layer of soft hide or fur rested against the skin, absorbing moisture and retaining warmth. Outer layers were tougher, often made from thicker hides with fur facing inward. This orientation maximized insulation by trapping air within the fur fibers. Some garments were waterproofed using animal fats, reducing heat loss from snow or condensation inside shelters. Footwear was particularly critical. Heat loss through the feet can rapidly lower core body temperature. Evidence from sites like Sungir in Russia shows elaborately constructed boots, sometimes lined with fur and stuffed with dried grass for insulation. These boots were worn during sleep as well as movement, preventing frostbite and preserving circulation. Head coverings were equally important. The human head loses heat rapidly, and Ice Age humans protected it carefully. Fur caps, hoods, and wrapped scarves appear repeatedly in reconstructions based on tool marks and wear patterns. Sleeping without head insulation in sub-zero temperatures would have been fatal, but clothing alone could not sustain warmth through long nights. The body itself had to generate and retain heat, and this is where diet became a weapon. Ice Age diets were dominated by animal fat. Large herbivores such as mammoth, reindeer, bison, and horse provided enormous quantities of fat-rich tissue. Marrow extraction marks on bones are ubiquitous at Ice Age sites. Humans cracked open long bones to access marrow, a dense energy source that burns slowly and efficiently. Fat consumption increases thermogenesis, the process by which the body produces heat during digestion. Before sleep, Ice Age humans often ate heavily. This was not indulgence. It was strategy. Digesting fat raises core body temperature for hours, creating internal warmth that sustained sleepers through the coldest part of the night. Protein also played a role, but fat was essential. Groups that failed to secure adequate fat likely suffered higher winter mortality. This selective pressure shaped hunting strategies, encouraging cooperation, planning, and seasonal migration toward fat-rich prey. Some populations also consumed fermented or aged foods, which are easier to digest and provide steady energy release. While direct evidence of fermentation is limited, ethnographic parallels from Arctic and subarctic cultures support this practice. Beyond diet, Ice Age humans displayed physiological adaptations that aided cold survival. Studies of skeletal remains suggest that many Ice Age populations had stockier builds with shorter limbs relative to torso size. This body shape reduces surface area relative to volume, minimizing heat loss. While genetics played a role, mental adaptation was also important. Children raised in cold environments develop different metabolic responses than those raised in warmer climates. Repeated exposure to cold trains the body to maintain higher baseline metabolic rates. Modern research on cold-adapted populations shows increased brown adipose tissue, a type of fat that generates heat rather than storing energy. While direct evidence from Ice Age humans is unavailable, the consistency of cold exposure suggests similar adaptations occurred. Sleep posture further reduced heat loss. Humans did not sleep sprawled out. They slept curled, knees drawn toward the chest, arms tucked inward. This posture reduces exposed surface area and conserves core warmth. Group sleeping enhanced this effect, creating shared microclimates beneath layered hides. Children were placed between adults, where body heat was highest. The elderly and injured were positioned closest to insulated walls or warm bedding. These arrangements reveal a deep understanding of thermal dynamics learned through generations of experience. Sleep itself was flexible. Ice Age humans did not experience uninterrupted 8-hour sleep. Nights were long, sometimes stretching beyond 14 hours in winter. Sleep was broken into segments. People woke, shifted position, checked fires, fed infants, or adjusted coverings. This pattern reduced the risk of hypothermia by preventing prolonged drops in body temperature. Dreamless unconsciousness, common in modern heated homes, would have been dangerous. Light sleep allowed rapid response to cold, noise, or predators. This vigilance shaped the human nervous system, reinforcing alertness even during rest. The consequences of these adaptations extended far beyond warmth. Because humans could sleep safely, they could recover from injury. Bone fractures show signs of healing that would have been impossible without rest. Women could survive childbirth. Infants could grow through winter. Elders could transmit knowledge rather than dying prematurely. Sleep preservation enabled cultural continuity. Storytelling, tool-making skills, hunting strategies, and survival knowledge were passed down in sheltered nights. Firelit shelters became classrooms. Children learned not only how to survive, but how to belong. This ability to rest also gave humans a strategic advantage over other species. Many animals migrate or hibernate to escape extreme cold. Humans stayed, they adapted. They occupied territories year-round, exploiting resources others could not. By mastering sleep in lethal cold, humans unlocked the ability to spread across the planet. From the frozen edges of Europe to the Arctic gateways of the Americas, survival through the night made expansion possible. The Ice Age did not simply test human endurance, it forged it. By 1900 years ago, the world began to change. The ice slowly loosened its grip. Glaciers retreated. Temperatures crept upward. But by that point, humans were no longer merely survivors of the Ice Age. They were its victors. The ability to sleep safely through lethal cold had done more than keep individuals alive. It had reshaped human destiny. Sleep was the silent foundation of everything that followed. Because Ice Age humans could rest, they could think. Because they could think, they could plan. And because they could plan, they could expand into environments no other large mammal dared to permanently occupy. One of the most profound consequences of mastering cold sleep was geographic expansion. Humans did not wait for warm climates to spread. They moved north and east into territories dominated by ice, tundra, and seasonal darkness. Archaeological evidence shows human presence in northern Eurasia well before the Ice Age ended. By at least 0 years ago, humans were living in regions with brutal winters and limited resources. Later, these adaptations made possible one of the greatest migrations in human history, the crossing into the Americas. Between roughly 0 and 15 years ago, humans followed animal herds across the Bering Land Bridge, a frozen expanse connecting Siberia to Alaska. This journey required surviving not just travel, but long winter nights in one of the coldest environments on Earth. Without the sleep strategies developed during the Ice Age, this migration would have been impossible. Sleeping safely meant populations could remain stable rather than constantly fleeing the cold. Stability allowed families to form, children to survive, and elders to accumulate wisdom. Over time, this produced something new, culture rooted in place. Social organization evolved under these pressures. Ice Age survival demanded cooperation. Shelter construction required many hands. Hunting large animals required coordination. Fire management, clothing production, and childcare demanded shared responsibility. Sleep arrangements reflected this reality. Humans slept together not out of comfort, but necessity. These nightly patterns reinforced trust, communication, and emotional bonds. Groups that failed to cooperate died out. Groups that worked together endured. Over generations, this selective pressure shaped human psychology toward empathy, social awareness, and shared identity. The hearth became the center of human life. Even when fires were banked or allowed to die down during sleep, the hearth defined living space. Around it, people ate, repaired tools, told stories, and passed knowledge. The rhythm of heating shelters before night and waking to rekindle warmth structured daily life. Many anthropologists believe this period strengthened the role of oral tradition. Long winter nights provided time for storytelling. Myths, hunting knowledge, survival lessons, and group history were shared in darkness while bodies rested together. Memory became a survival tool. Technology advanced rapidly under cold pressure. The need to sleep safely drove innovation in hide processing, sewing, insulation, and shelter design. Bone needles became finer. Clothing became more complex. Bedding systems improved. These technologies did not disappear when the Ice Age ended. They evolved into the foundations of later human societies. Tailored clothing led to cultural identity expressed through dress. Shelter design influenced early architecture. Fire management techniques informed later cooking, metallurgy, and craftsmanship. Even the human relationship with sleep itself changed. Modern humans often think of sleep as passive. For Ice Age humans, sleep was active survival. This shaped our nervous systems. Humans evolved to wake easily, respond to threats, and adapt sleep patterns to environment. Traces of this remain today in light sleep, night waking, and sensitivity to temperature. The psychological resilience developed during Ice Age nights also mattered. Living with constant risk forged emotional endurance. Fear was managed, not eliminated. Vigilance became normal. This capacity allowed humans to face later challenges such as predators, rival groups, and environmental disasters. When the climate warmed and agriculture emerged, humans carried these adaptations with them. Early farmers still layered bedding, they still clustered families indoors, they still relied on fire and insulation. The lessons of Ice Age sleep did not vanish. They became embedded in human behavior. The ultimate consequence of surviving the Ice Age night was dominance. Many species vanished as climates shifted. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, cave lions, and giant deer disappeared. Humans remained. Not because they were stronger or faster, but because they could adapt behaviorally and socially to extreme environments. Sleep, often overlooked in history, was central to this success. Without sleep, there is no healing. Without healing, there is no reproduction. Without reproduction, there is no culture. By protecting sleep in lethal cold, Ice Age humans ensured continuity. This story corrects a long-standing myth. Ice Age humans were not barely surviving primitives huddled in misery. They were skilled engineers of their environment. They understood insulation, airflow, energy balance, and group dynamics through lived experience. They adapted not by resisting nature blindly, but by working with it. The frozen night did not defeat them, it shaped them, and in doing so, it laid the groundwork for everything humanity would become.